Hi everyone, welcome to Pandas in Python series, and today we'll be learning about frequency distribution in Pandas. So let's go. To understand this, let's take a sample data over here and I'll convert it to a data frame. So firstly import my Pandas library by writing import pandas as pd, and now I'll convert it to a data frame. So for this let me write a equal to pd dot data frame, and then I'll write my data over here. If we print a, we can see it looks something like this. Here we have got different categories and scores corresponding to each and every single category. Now we will aim to get a frequency distribution. So for this, let's consider our text variable, that is category. So we want to know how many times A is getting repeated, how many times B is getting repeated, or how many times C is getting repeated. So that's called a frequency distribution. So for this, we will write value counts function. So let's write our dataset name A, and now we will write the name of the column which we need. So A dot category, and now we'll write value underscore counts. We will see that by default the frequency distribution is arranged in descending order. So over here, since A is repeated 4 times, B and C are repeated 3 times each. Now to sort it in descending order, we can write A dot category ascending equal to false. Sorry, ascending equal to true, my bad. And then we can see that when we want to sort it in ascending order, then B and C are the smallest coming frequencies and A has the highest frequency, which is 4. There is an alternative way to write the column names. So instead of A dot category, we can in fact write A square bracket category as well. And then if we write dot value underscore counts, we will get the same result. It's just another way of writing the pandas code. Now there is one more way, that instead of these actual numbers, we want a percentage distribution. So we can see that this data frame has got 10 rows, and now A is repeated 4 times. So what if instead of 4, we want 4 divided by 10, that is A is repeated 40% of the times. Similarly, B and C are repeated 3 divided by 10, that is 30% of the time each, right? So for this, let me copy paste the same code, which is A square bracket category dot value counts, and here we can use a parameter called normalize equal to true. When we do this thing, so instead of the actual count, you see here it is written name colon count. Here instead of the counts, we are getting the proportion, that is A is repeated 40% of the time and B and C are repeated 30% of the times each in the dataset. In the previous example, we had seen that we had created a frequency distribution for a text variable. So our dataset was looking something like this, where we had done a frequency distribution for the column called category. But what if we want a frequency distribution for something like a numeric column? So over here, example, our column is like scores. So for this, we want to create some buckets or groups. So for this, let's create our 2 variables. One is called bins, which is, and here we'll be having bin labels. So how does this work is, we will be converting these scores into different buckets like 80 to 85, 85 to 90, 90 to 95, etc. Now for this, I will use the cut function. So for this, I will write it as pd.cut, and I will give my series. So which is, I want it as A dot, I'm doing it on scores, right? So I'll write A dot scores. Here my bins are my bins variable, which is this one. And over here, my labels are equal to bin underscore labels. Now if we do this thing, and let me save it as a new column in this data frame. Okay, firstly, let me write it like this. So we can see that corresponding to each and every single value, because it was 85 here, so it has been tagged to 80 to 85 label. Similarly, 90 was converted to 85 to 90 label. Now to save it as a new column, I'll write something like A square bracket buckets. So let's have a look. That is, if we see this thing, we can see 85 has been tagged to 80 to 85 bucket and not 85 to 90. It is a thing to be noted that in these labels over here, the lower limit is excluded. That's why 85 is belonging to 80 to 85 and not 85 to 90. Now to get a frequency distribution for this, what we can simply do, A square bracket buckets, and then again we can run our value underscore counts function. So which will give us how many times each of the buckets is getting repeated. Till now we had discussed about frequency distribution for only one single variable, which can be either categorical or numerical. But what if we want a frequency distribution corresponding to two different variables? So let's say over here we have variables like category and buckets, and we want a frequency distribution corresponding to both of them. So then we will use the crosstab function. So for this we will write pd.crosstab, and over here in this I'll write my first thing is a.category and my second thing is a.buckets. So we have got this matrix in return. Now the way to read this matrix is that because we have written a.category here, so that's why in rows we will see various categories. Similarly, because we have written buckets over here, so now each column represents a bucket. So the way to read this matrix is that corresponding to category A and bucket 80 to 85, there are 4 observations in the data set. And if we actually refer back to our table, we can see that this is A 80 to 85, this is the first one, A 80 to 85 is the second one, this is the A 80 to 85 is the third one, and this is the fourth one. And we can notice that corresponding to A 85 to 90, there are no observations in this data set. That's why it has a frequency 0 corresponding to it. So that was all about frequency distribution in Pandas. Stay tuned for upcoming content in Pandas and Python series. Until then, see you soon.